And again, there's all these terrible silver linings, right? And I use those words intentionally, right? Again, I would not wish this on my worst enemy. But with that, I found all these moments where I was grateful. And it was this like incredible dichotomy of like really awful stuff and then really beautiful moments. For that, it's, they always say cancer is a club you never want to join. But when you get there, there's some really great people. And occasionally there's some good moments.
Welcome to another wonderful day and another wonderful podcast. And we are here with me, Eli Devonte. I help neurodivergent entrepreneurs actually with their businesses, but more importantly, we have a beautiful lady with us today. As always, I do not have a clue what she does, how she does things, what her backstory is, blah de blah de blah. Clueless Eli is his name, and Clueless Eli is who I am. Welcome, Erica. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Eli, for having me. And I love the spontaneity of this upcoming conversation.
Yeah, so do I. I just hope that I don't mess it up. We just have to wait and see. Only time will tell. So let us do the thing that we always do on the podcast, and we'll ask you, what do you do in your successful business to help your clients be successful? And then we'll go with the flow.
I actually feel like, Eli, I lead two lives. So I have a professional life where I do some really beautiful work for kids with cancer and their families. And then I have a personal life where I really support women who are facing breast cancer, and specifically the choice to have a mastectomy, if you know what that is. It's a really invasive surgery to remove your breasts, move your body, remove those body parts that are causing you trouble. And I feel really passionately about that because it's something that people don't always talk about.
Yeah, people tend to be quite afraid of talking about cancer, which I totally understand. And it runs rife in a lot of people's family because I believe 50% of us at some stage get cancer within our lives. So, okay, so how exactly do you help people in that way? So you've got the two-prong system going on there, which is with the kids, which is beautiful. And then you're obviously with the ladies and with breast cancer. So let's start with how do you help the ladies? In which way do you do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would even clarify that 1 in 8 women are expected to get breast cancer in their lifetime. So if you or your listeners know more than 8 women, you are probably going to be having somebody in your life with this diagnosis. And a lot of times what happens is women are presented with a lot of choices and a lot of information. It feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. And one of the biggest decisions that a woman has to make is the treatment plan. Then they range from, just do nothing to some really aggressive options. It usually comes down to, do you want to have just a small cancer taken out of your breast? That they call that a lumpectomy. Or do you want to have the entire breast removed and, make a decision to have fake breasts or to have just flat chest? It's like really one of these conversations that everybody kind of doesn't want to say. So I like to bring it to the light. And I'm really powerfully advocating for that double mastectomy because it can be a life-saving option. It really allows the number one thing, and I think your listeners would be interested in, it allows the mind to relax, which might sound really counterintuitive because it sounds like a really scary surgery. It sounds like a really invasive procedure. But what it comes with is a release of the mental load. Okay. Because if you have this surgery, you have, the opportunity to remove your breasts, you cannot relapse with breast cancer. You don't have them anymore. And it's that mental freedom from fear that I really powerfully advocate for. And the way I do that is take away kind of the unknowns associated with it. So I wrote a book about this journey that I did 5 years ago, actually 6 years ago now. And I can tell you the story in a little bit, but somebody in my network, another woman who I didn't know at all, showed me, she learned that I had this surgery coming up. She pulled me aside and she said, hey, I know we don't know each other very well, but would you be interested in seeing my breasts? And I was like, what?
Wow.
This is really kind of strange. She worked in my office. I didn't know her, but I was so curious because nobody else could tell me what to expect. So I looked around and I was like, okay, this is not professional, but yes, I do. I really would like to.
Okay.
So we went off to a bathroom in the office that was far off the beaten path, locked the door. She takes off her shirt and she shows me her breasts. For reals. They looked so real, Eli. And they were completely fake. And she'd had the exact same surgery I was about to do. And in that moment, my entire mindset shifted. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to be okay. And it was such a really rare gift, right? It was like this incredible opportunity that very few people get to experience. I don't know a lot of people who meet strangers who then shows them this intimate part of themselves just after meeting for a few minutes.
I get it.
And so that was my mission. This is how I help women. I decided in that moment I wanted to pay it forward. Because in that moment, this woman gave me such a gift of vulnerability. She gave me this gift of hope and this gift of like incredible vision as to what the end game was going to be. Great. But that was rare. So I took a lot of pictures before, during, and after my own surgery. And that made a significant premise of the book that I'm publishing now, because I wanted women to know what nobody else wants to talk about. What is it actually like to go through this kind of surgery in a way that's not having a doctor just sit there and tell you about it? It's a way for you to actually see it. And I feel really confident that is making a difference for women. I've got so many people that are newly diagnosed that have said to me, oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much for being vulnerable. And it gave me hope too. So I feel like as much as it exposes me vulnerably, it is something that I feel is a gift to other women. And I really hope that it helps.
And I can't imagine what it was like many years ago when you didn't have the breast surgery where you can rebuild the breast many years, because it's only recent really they've been able to do this. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the 70s, is it not, when this was able to be done? So breast cancer obviously has been going for a very, very long time. So the fear of losing your breast or any woman's breast, I can't imagine what it's like, because that's part of you being a woman, right? It's and when before that technology came along, like I said, I just can't imagine it. So, but I'm glad that you was in a position where someone actually did what they did, because it put their mind at rest and your mind at rest to know there was something that could be done, that you can still feel like you're a woman.
Yes.
Because that's the big, it's not so, what was the biggest fear for you at the time when you had breast cancer for yourself? Was it the actual dying of cancer, or was it not being a woman?
Great question. And the answer is both. The unique part of my story, and what you just said, was I afraid of dying? You bet I was. Because my mother had died of breast cancer 20 years earlier. And to your point, Eli, she did not choose to have a mastectomy because back then there really wasn't as many options for reconstruction. And she really felt like she wanted to retain her breasts to feel like a woman.
Yes.
I asked her that question. I said, Mom, a few months before she was dying and it was clear that that's the end was coming. People had said if she had had that double mastectomy right when she was diagnosed, she might still have the opportunity to live.
Yeah.
And I said, Mom, why didn't you choose that mastectomy years ago? It was a really painful conversation. And she said, I just wanted to retain the ability to feel like a woman. And I was like, oh, I totally get it. And I'm so sad about it. So when it was my turn, I had carried that fear of getting breast cancer myself every day after she died. And so when it happened to me and I ended up with that same diagnosis, I was in the same spot as her years later. I was like, oh my God, number one, I cannot make this the beginning of my end. And now I have more options because I can have this reconstructive to look just like I did before. And I want to make a different decision than my mom. I want to rectify and justify and provide, I don't know, a new chapter to a story that my mom's ended with. And so for me, that decision was pretty easy, but also pretty terrifying because I didn't want to die. I'd seen what she had been through.
Yes.
And, I still wanted to retain the feel and look and feel of a woman. And now I knew that it was possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's so you was living the double whammy, actually, because not only was you facing the prospect of dying, but also you was reliving what you was actually gone through with your mother.
Yes.
So that was particularly hard for you, but it made your decision slightly easier, going the opposite way to save your life because you had seen what happened to your mother. So you had double trauma going through with the situation. You had a trauma of you going through it and plus going through it again with your mother, even though your mother wasn't with you. But I totally understand the two go together because they're so similar, right?
Yeah.
But she gave you a gift in a way because she showed you, don't be like me. I made the mistake. It is what it is. And in a way, you did what you did and she saved your life, really, to be honest. Is that fair enough for me to say?
100%. I was in terrible grief when she died, and there were so many regrets over the decisions that were made medically. And I struggled with that for many years. And, if you think about fate and purpose, she absolutely saved my life. Absolutely saved my life. And it's taken me lots of years of therapy and lots of, time and healing to see that gift that she gave me. And that's actually, to be honest, part of the reason I wrote the book too, is because, what do you do when you get a really great gift? You also want to give that to others. And that's the gift I wanted to give to so many other people, which is why, again, I decided to write a book about it. So
you got yourself in a situation where you went through the process and your breasts were rebuilt. Can I say that? Does that sound right? Rebuilt?
Oh, 100%.
It's like someone came over to you and put scaffolding around you and then, started chipping away. I don't like to say that. Rebuilt.
No, I felt like a robot from Star Wars for a really long time.
Really?
Like one of those droids. I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, where they put the parts back. Yeah. They put the parts back in where you're like half human, half, robot. And that's the way I felt for a really long time. So absolutely, you used the right language. I had them rebuilt.
And was it a situation, the reason why you felt like you was a robot, it didn't feel quite real, is because in your mind you had to get used to, they were taken away, then they were being put. It wasn't a situation where they didn't feel real or they didn't sit properly, but was it more of a mental state or a physical state, or a bit of both?
A bit of both. I think physically my body got used to it. But in the beginning, somebody would ask me, what does it feel like? How do you feel with these sort of artificial body parts? And I said, it feels like a necklace, like a heavy necklace that you can never take off. Right? So it's just like, sometimes it's just a little bit uncomfortable and you feel this heaviness. So there was that physicality of it. But mentally, I had to shift my mindset to say, yes, these are artificial parts, but they're mine. They're mine and they are me and they are my body. And I will say medical surgery these days is incredible. I mean, I can wear the same exact dresses, the same exact bikini bathing suits as before I had the surgery, and nobody would know. Oh, really? Nobody would know. Yeah. They look so real. Again, medical advances have just become so sophisticated. We can laugh, like they gave me options. They said, we can like rebuild your breasts bigger or smaller. And I was like, I don't think I want bigger. Smaller doesn't seem like that's worth it. And so, I ended up just exactly with what I had before. And it was almost exactly the same.
That's good.
And again, I don't know that people talk about that much. If you knew that you had cancer in your arm and they said we could cut off your arm and give you an arm that looked and felt exactly the same way, you'd probably do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so I just, you talk about neurodivergent. Again, when you have a cancer diagnosis, you can't even think straight because there is so much coming at you, like a fire hose. There's decisions, there's fears. It's like, what if I'm going to die? What if I'm going to live? And how do I tell people? Some people say some really weird, awkward things to you. And, some people are step out of your life because they are afraid. I mean, there's so many things that mess with your mind. And so I just think that taking one more decision outside of the realm of really challenging, like making some easier decisions, is just going to make you more able to then focus on the harder ones too, or the harder conversations. It's really trying, for me, it was such a mental game. It's a physical game. Cancer is a physical disease, but it is a mental game.
Massively. Talking about neurodivergent, have you had to actually help people through the whole process that were neurodivergent, or you and the family that are neurodivergent?
Yeah. I mean, I think to be honest, I think we all are a little neurodivergent, right? Every human experiences it. I mean, I had to obviously tell my husband, probably has some neurodivergent tendencies too. And like a lot of men, compartmentalize that, right? Compartmentalize the fear of A, you're a husband, B, you're a dad, C, you're a caregiver, and you're thrown into all of these new roles as a caregiver that you didn't know, you didn't have experience with, and you didn't expect, right? And then particularly having to talk to my children about it in their early development years of, their own mind share of it. My kids were 5 and 8, and their ability to comprehend what I'm saying and comprehend what these big words mean that don't make sense to them was a really interesting journey. My daughter was old enough to know what cancer was, but young enough to have a lot of questions about it. She knew that my mom had died, so she would ask me things like, Mom, are you going to die? And I'd have to answer these questions. And, these are really big conversations that can shape a mind when you're 8 years old. I think that it created some neural pathways for her about compassion and about people being different and still being okay. Again, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, and I wouldn't wish it on children to have to comprehend that. But I feel grateful that my daughter was able to create stories in her mind about courage and hope. And she was able to really see what it's like to be in struggle and still be a mom or still be a woman. And as you can imagine, my kids see my fake breasts all the time. We're that family that, we all change together when we're heading out to the pool and things like that. And for my son, he was 5 at the time. He barely remembers it. But for him, he talks about it. He knows about it. And I think his level of acceptance of difference is higher than most kids. He's pretty empathetic too. And so I just think about, what neural pathways were created for them at that pivotal time in their brain development that maybe will be beneficial to them as they grow to be their own adults, as they face their own challenges. And and hopefully never have to deal with this, but I guarantee someone in their life will.
So when you spoke to your kids about the situation, obviously your husband knew before, but when the family was actually going through this whole situation, did you feel like there was a difference after the fact? There was a difference in the formation of the family, stronger, communication was better. And what did you see the before and after? What does it do to the family when you go through these stages?
Great question. I mean, I definitely think it brought us all closer, right? Because there's nothing like a health scare and facing mortality that brings you closer to what really matters in life, right? It strips away the things that you care about materially, right? You don't care as much about houses, clothes, money. Those are the things that you can't take with you if you die. And so stripping away those, and also having an opportunity to like purposely slow down as a family is, I think, again, a pause. I would say it was a pause for our family.
Okay.
That probably has shaped us since then. I do think that we value experiences far more than we value things.
Okay.
And because my mom passed away, they know they lost a grandmother they never met.
Oh, really?
They never met her. She died well before I was even married. I think the absence of that just creates a frame for them. It in some ways they have a maturity about life. They have a maturity about mortality. And, they do say, oh, I'm so glad, her name is Joan. Grandma Joan is your guardian angel, Mom. And I'm so glad that, we have Grandma Joan who watches over us too. Those are the words we use around the house. And again, I think it just makes us a lot more empathetic and strong.
And, that's a great thing. You go through great adversity. I mean, it was a very, very difficult time, especially for you more than anyone else, because you had, like I said, the double whammy. You had to go through it twice, once with yourself and another time with your mother at the same time, because it brought everything back. But your family obviously suffered. It was very difficult for the kids, but there was a golden nugget on the other side, because luckily we're in the age of the technology where you had them rebuilt. You became stronger as a family, but you became stronger yourself, because just like anything in life, when you struggle, you have to then move on and go on to the next stage and become stronger. Hence, you were in a position to help other people and thought, you know what, this can't go on. I was very lucky because of A, B, and C, but God knows what it's like for other people that weren't in the position I was when this lady showed me her breasts. So I can imagine the strength on the other side. Your life has improved tenfold, to be honest. Want for a better word, because it's not a nice thing to go through, but you're on the other side, right? And so you're stronger as a family, and you're stronger as a person. And I can imagine you're stronger even with your partner. Your partner being in the position of losing you made him reevaluate your relationship. And I'm not saying your relationship was good or bad or whatever, but what I'm saying, he would have had to reevaluate your relationship and understand how much you mean to him. And I'm thinking it made your relationship stronger at the end of the day. Life is too short, How did that did that encapsulate what I said? Does that sound correct?
100%. Yeah. I mean, as you can imagine, my husband and I had to have some powerful conversations before the surgery and to say things like, are you still going to love the same way? And the answer is yes. That was his answer. And he said, just because your body may change, and we didn't know what it was going to be like, really. He said, I still think you're beautiful. I still think I love you. Well, I still know I love you. And those are really powerful conversations to renew that commitment And to know that this person is going to be with you no matter what. And it wasn't just about how you looked. It was really about what was underneath all of that anyway. So really powerful commitment.
Yeah, it's great because it's very easy to take each other for granted, especially when the years start to go. You get into a trend, right? Like everybody.
Like everybody.
Yeah. So as you said, it was like taking your commitment vows, again, isn't it?
Yes. And again, there's all these terrible silver linings, right? And I use those words intentionally, right?
Yeah,
again, I would not wish this on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
But with that, I found all these moments where I was grateful. And it was this like incredible dichotomy of like really awful stuff and then really beautiful moments. And for that, it's they always say cancer is a club you never want to join. But when you get there, there's some really great people, and occasionally there's some good moments.
I can imagine. Can I go back to speaking about your mother? The relationship you had with her must have been, I suppose it was up and down, because it was a situation that I take it she was never happy with herself. She wasn't totally, because of the decision she made, but she still didn't feel quite right because obviously they had to take some away from her breast. So that must have changed her. I shouldn't assume. I'm thinking that must have changed her, because that's a massive thing in a woman's body, and because that's not quite right in her head. How did that change her, and how did that play with your relationship?
Oh, such a great question. To start by saying I loved her dearly. I love her dearly. I would say that's not even past tense. And yet there were ups and downs during that time. She had a roller coaster of a battle. She battled for 4 years. And I would say she was cured and then relapsed 4 times. So you can imagine, we had the ups and downs of, we had that celebration party of being cancer-free, only to find out 6 months later it came back. And, as each of those relapses occurred, as you can imagine, the stakes got higher. And, I spent a lot of time trying to intervene, right? Meaning I said, okay, Mom, wait a minute. You've relapsed now 3 times. We're going to go to some serious specialists. I'm going to leverage every network I have and every connection I have, and I'm going to get you into the best, fanciest cancer centers in the country. And she said no. I even got her appointments at Memorial Sloan Kettering. It's one of the best centers in New York City. She went once and she said she'd never go again. And I was like, what?
What happened?
And it was because she felt like her hometown, small town doctor cared about her the most. And that when she went to a fancy, highfalutin specialist, she was just the number. And she didn't feel comfortable. And I was like, okay, great. But let me give you a warm hug instead of you trying to get that warm hug from your, the oncologist at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I was really mad. I was like, this is not about who cares about you more. It's about who can save your life. And we had some really intense debates about this. And, and ultimately I could not force her to do what she didn't want to do. I could not force her to get that quote, fancier care. And, I've come to realize she was always on the path she wanted to be on, and she knew what was most important. And I have to respect that. I have to respect that. And I had to come to terms with that. Our biggest fight was after, she refused to go back to Memorial Sloan Kettering. And then after that, I just let go. After that, it's not that I at that point knew that she was eventually going to die, but at that point, I just had to let go, trying to change the outcome and to change her outlook. Her decisions were hers, and she would say that these are my decisions. And I, do I have some regret over those? Probably, but again, in her last days of life, she said it was always going to go this way anyway. And I was glad that I was able to sleep in my own bed and to be with my own people during the journey. And, again, I've had lots of therapy to know that that's okay. Women or anyone in a health journey gets to make their own choices. So I think I'm so grateful, to be honest, that I was able to have those conversations with her, to be able to close out her final days with that closure, or with the ability to work through those differences. And I also say, the one thing that cancer gave me in her leaving of this earth was the opportunity to say goodbye. And not everybody gets that.
I know, that's true. That is very
there are a lot of tragic accidents and, untimely, just tragedies. And the greatest gift I ever got was the opportunity to say goodbye.
But also, it was a bit of a roller coaster of a ride, because, as you said, the cancer came back 4 times, and I'm sure at the time you felt resentful towards it at certain times, because you thought on the first time, "Oh, come on, Mum, just suck it up. It's not going to be long. Just with that specialist for 2 months, 3 months, whatever the case is." I totally understand that. I would be the same way. And then the second time, and so on and so forth. So that wasn't easy for you at all, especially when you see there is a way for her to be able to be much better, probably permanently, especially if she had the specialist treatment she needed, be that the reconstruction, etc. But I totally understand you got to a point that you had to admit to, this is her journey. It's her journey. She's got to live it. But it doesn't mean, Erica, that you had to like it. That still was quite a difficult situation for you to go through, and that's really hard to let some emotional content go from that point of view, to allow someone so close to live their journey when you believe it's detrimental to her and detrimental to you, because she's still your mother. That must be really hard. How hard was that when you were coming to the edge of saying to yourself, I have to just let her do her thing. She has every right to do that. But before you got to that stage, how intense was that? And what was the straw that broke the camel's back?
Really interesting question. I mean, for me, the straw that broke the camel's back was when, again, she didn't want to go back to, the city and into the specialized care that I had, worked so hard to get her to an appointment. Honestly, like I'd pulled some connections to try and get her some of these appointments. But an interesting divergent part of the story is then after that, I had accepted what was to be. However, my dad did not. And I think the place where I realized finally that I was on, the one that worked for me is my mom and I then began to have conversations about what did she want for her funeral. And I'm going to pause here. And life lessons that I won't be able to have in the future, right? I was single. I was not even married at the time. So we quickly started to talk about what is a funeral going to be like, and what songs does she want played. And my dad could not handle it. Couldn't handle it. And finally, we just said, you know what? You have to leave the room, because we're going to have this conversation, and I'm going to write it all down, and it is going to be the thing that I can handle, because I had let go. I had already accepted, but he could not. And in fact, 2 days before she passed away, she was in the hospital, obviously, and quite out of it, probably comatose most of the time. My dad kept saying, "When are we giving her more chemo? When is the chemo coming?" And I looked at him like, "Hey, Dad, I love you, and that is not the place that we are in." And so for me, the breaking point was I had accepted it.
Let me hold you there. Sorry.
Yeah.
So when you said that to your dad, and you said, that's not the place we're in, what was his reaction to you at that time?
It was like disbelief. He kept saying, where is the doctor? Where is the chemotherapy? And I had to like pull him into one of those patient rooms that they have with just the table and chairs. And I had to sit him down. And I said, Dad, we are not at a place of treatment anymore. And I was so surprised he didn't know that. You know, I was like, Dad, we are in hospice. We are making sure that she is most comfortable and not in pain in these final days and hours of her life. And I was so surprised. I had not understood the depth of his denial and disbelief, and that perhaps months ago, our two paths had diverged, right? Where I moved into a place of acceptance and he had continued in hope and disbelief, which is an okay place for someone, but I did not realize how deep the differences were. And I had a lot of compassion for him. He literally had no idea that she was probably about to die, whereas I was quite aware of that.
And at that time, when you spoke to him, did the penny drop, or did that happen later on, way later on? Because you only had 2 days to go. Did at that point, did the penny drop with him, or did that happen a day or so later? You there? 1, 2, 3.
Oh, sorry, cut out there. Yeah. Sorry, yes. You cut out there, but yes, I don't think the penny fully dropped for him because he kept nodding and saying, yes, I understand. But you know, I spent the night in the hospital with her that evening because I knew that her time was near. And he made the choice to just go home. And he said, I'll be back in the morning, you know, after a good night's sleep. And, you know, she passed away at about 11:30 at night. Just the two of us, quietly. I knew it was the end. You know, I was there to hold her hand. I told her to let go. But I then, you know, my dad wasn't there. And that's okay. I don't think he could have handled it. I don't think he could have handled it. And again, that's the greatest gift she probably gave me, which is like that opportunity with just the two of us. And there was no fighting it. My dad kept fighting it. And I was not in fight of that. I was in acceptance. And so that was a really incredibly, as you can imagine, Eli, incredibly challenging moment, but one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed at the same time. I don't think my dad could have handled that. I had to call him and tell him.
I get you, but I'm really glad you was in the position to be there for her and her there for you at the same time. So there's a two-way street that's happening there. I'm sorry to hear about your father, but you're totally right. I mean, he was still going through denial. So
yes.
If he was there, it would have made things quite difficult for all of you. But who knows? The main thing is that you had that poignant moment with the both of you. And then I take it, you had to then tell your father. And then what happened then when you spoke to him? Yeah.
Whew. Those are some powerful moments. You know, I sat with her for a while. It's really incredible. And I don't know if anybody's ever watched somebody die, but you could almost see her soul disappear, right? She, within just, minutes before she died and the minutes after, not much changed, but she looked like an entirely different being in that I looked at it as if her soul was gone. And it was just really the body was just the casing that was containing what was really her, which is your soul.
Yes.
So I spent a few minutes and reconciled that, this was just flesh and bones. This wasn't really her anymore. I had to walk out in the hallway and a nurse approached me and then I sort of collapsed in the hall. telling her, because it was just the two of us when it happened. So, she picked me up, helped me into a chair, and then we made that phone call to my dad, and he said, okay. He drove back to the hospital in the middle of the night, and probably one of the saddest things was, he had to pick me up, and we left her in the hospital, and they took care of her in terms of, being quite transparent, sending her to a morgue. And I had to go home. I had to go home. I had to leave the hospital with the doors that closed behind me. I've never set foot in that hospital ever again. And I had to go home in this just absolute dual reality of everyone around me in the world just going on as if nothing had happened. And then I had to just go home and go to bed. And incredibly, incredibly out of body experience for me.
And was home did you live with your mother at the time, or you had your own place at the time?
I had my own place at the time. I actually lived quite far away. So I had to go back to my childhood home. When I say home, I went to my childhood home where I had grown up, where they were still living, and sleep in my childhood bedroom. How weird is that too?
That is really weird. So when you went home and you got there, how did you feel? Did you feel when you went into the home, did the home feel different from the point of view? Did it feel empty, or did it feel just normal? What was the feeling when you went in there as you was going through the house?
It felt empty, and it felt meaningless. And what I mean by that is, again, when you experience that kind of loss, and also when you experience the physicality of watching someone die, you realize nothing else matters. Right? She had a drawer full of perfume and makeup. None of it mattered. She had a closet full of clothes and things, and none of it mattered. And whether the house was clean or not didn't matter. It was really just this eye-opening moment of how easily we can all get so caught up in what we think life is about. Careers, striving, again, material possessions, and none of that mattered. And I still stay with that today, of that feeling. I just feel like I have this extra knowledge of you can't take it with you. And everything felt just a little bit emptier. And I felt like I was on this island where I had this new knowledge. This new knowledge that you probably are not supposed to have. It's not the normal order of life. Children aren't often, at such a young age, supposed to lose their parent. And I didn't know many other people who had done the same. I felt so lonely. So lonely.
One other question I'd like to ask, and it'll sound strange at first, but there's a reason for it, so just bear with me. So your mother's gone. The house is empty. You've gone to bed. You've come back. A few days later, it's time to now sort her things out: clothes, possessions, etc. What was that like?
Yeah. Oh, so many stories of these things. As I mentioned, my mom and I sat down before she died, and we talked about things like her funeral, but we also talked about her things and what to do with them. And she was very clear that she didn't want us to hold on to them. She wanted us to donate them and to try to not be sad about them.
Okay.
Which is, interesting thing. So within days, a lot of her friends came over, and some of my friends, and we went through her closet. And it was a mixture of laughter and just absolute sadness and bittersweet moments in between, right? So, we laughed at some of the clothes that she hung on to way too long, some of the things that were so out of style, things with shoulder pads. And, we laughed just at those moments.
A bit like Out of Dynasty, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Right. But then, there was these bittersweet moments where I would pull out a sweater that I had just bought for her at Christmas. right? And so it was brand new with the tags on it.
Okay.
And I remember when I bought the sweater, I bought it intentionally knowing that she was probably going to die. And so I picked out a color that I would like because I knew that I would then eventually get that sweater. And so that was kind of bittersweet to know that months before I had picked out something essentially to be a gift for her, but that was really, I knew was going to come to me.
But it was a memory, but it was a memory for you.
But it was a memory for me.
Yeah.
So it was this fascinating journey. We piled it all into bags and we brought it to a donation service where they, take donated clothes and, repurpose them or give them to, disadvantaged folks. And on the drive there, I was like, you know what? I'm so happy I'm doing this. I feel really glad, but I want to keep this one thing. I want to keep her coat, like her winter coat. And, it was just like oversized for me. She was a little bit bigger than I was, but I was like, I want to keep the coat. So I have a lot of bags in the back. I go to the donation center. They open the doors of the back of my car and they start taking things out and everyone's helping because there's so many bags. And in the midst of it, I forget. And I forgot to pull out the coat. And I start saying, oh my gosh, like there was probably 30 bags of stuff. Where's the coat? Where's the coat? They can't find it. There's a line of people behind me. And I have to, in that moment, decide to drop it. And I said, you know what, it's okay. And closed the doors and I drove away. I cried the whole way home over that coat. And I was like so mad at myself and I was mad at cancer. I was mad at God. And it was over this like one coat that didn't fit me anyway, and I could hear her. I could hear her in my mind laughing at me, of all things, being like, Erica, let it go. It's just a coat.
Well,
as if she was there. I could hear her saying that to me. And it was the only thing that stopped me from like absolutely bawling and crying. Her laughing at me saying, Erica, it's just a coat. And again, I had these moments after that for like all of these like beautiful things for years to come.
Well, the reason why I asked you, because that is a moment that resonates with me. My father died of prostate cancer. And he was my grandfather, but I saw him as my father. And when he died of prostate cancer, when it came to getting rid of these things, that was quite difficult because it was all right getting it together. That was difficult enough. And just like you, I kept certain jackets and stuff like that because he was a stylish man anyway. So anything that was left behind, I could easily wear because he was very stylish. But when it came to, getting rid of his stuff and some of the stuff had to, go to the local tip and whatever else, that was very difficult. I cried quite hard. And the reason why I cried, it felt like I was disrespecting him. It's like I didn't care, which I did, but you're throwing these things away like from my perception at the time, like they mean nothing. And it wasn't the case, but that's how you feel at the time. And that was really, really difficult when it came to getting things out of the house and then throwing things or distributing things. Okay, distributing wasn't too bad, but that was difficult. But I think there's some things you have to throw away, and it's like you're throwing them away. I found that difficult personally. That's what I went through with my father.
I absolutely agree with that. It becomes this really strange experience, and I spent a lot of time reading about this too, where we almost give human-like qualities to tangible objects, and just this phenomena that humans do of like how we get attached to things that have no emotion, have no feelings, but we feel like they do. We feel bad for the thing you throw in the trash. And I just thought it was this really interesting human quirk that we do that. And so it's absolutely true that you felt, some kind of emotions about, and some grief around throwing those things away.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, we associate them with events.
Yeah.
Certain times
Yeah.
they wore certain things, or a typical thing they would do at a certain time. So, it's totally natural. So, but it was a difficult time, and I totally understand you. It's something that still holds with you. You learn to cope. But there are days where it's still difficult, right? I take it you have certain days that you still have issues with your mother and whatever. As much as you're learning to cope, but it never quite go completely. And I don't intend it for it to go complete, but it's difficult.
Yeah. I actually never want those memories and that pain to go, because then it means she's really gone. So I actually take value in when I remember even the hard times.
That's well said. Okay, so when it comes to children, so you help children also. So we spoke about the women briefly, but children, you decided to also focus on children in some way. How did that come about? Because especially when your one-to-one experience is the breast cancer, how did you come about helping the children?
Yeah, it's so interesting. When my mom was sick, she would say, this is really terrible, right? I have this cancer and, it's not good, but at least I've had a full life, right? At least I'm not a kid. And that was she really stuck with that. Okay. And she had, in her own journey, had such compassion for kids. And so when I was in my early 20s and, probably a bit jaded by the corporate world and the jobs that I was holding, she said, why don't you stop your own pity party and go out and help somebody else? And so I ended up volunteering at a summer camp for children with cancer. And it became like the greatest thing that ever brought me purpose. And it was something I would do, in the evenings, weekends, or I would take a break from work to do this volunteer work. And I loved it. And then I would go to this 9-to-5 job and feel like it was soulless. And, it was just, filling the pockets of others. And so after she died, again, I had this moment of, what am I doing? Why am I spending my daytime just working these 9-to-5 jobs that are, for, again, these reasons that don't make sense to me anymore? And so I quit. I just out and quit. And again, I was really changed after she died about what's really important in life. But of course, naturally, then I started to panic when you decide it's really noble to quit your job and not work for a big company. But then you realize, oh, my goodness, I still do have to live on this earth and pay bills and have purpose. Totally. And I ended up networking like mad, just trying to find a job again, just feeling like, what have I done? But I went to one of those networking events and a lovely woman walked up to me and she said, what are you looking for? I said, well, I'm looking for a new job in human resources. I said, well, you know what I really want? And it came out of nowhere. I just blurted it out. I was like, you know what I really want to do? I really want to lead an organization that helps kids with cancer. And she was like, okay, didn't expect you to say that, but all right. And, she, shook my hand, we exchanged business cards, and I never heard from her again. But 3 weeks later, she called me and she said, hey, I remember you. I only spoke to her for a minute. She said, I remember you. And I saw this job at an organization called the Pinky Swear Foundation, and they help kids with cancer and their families. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh my God, yes, I would. And so I went after this job as if my life depended on it. I was not a traditional candidate. I'd never led a nonprofit before, but ultimately I got the job based on my experiences. And so today I lead an organization and we pay the bills for families when their child is in a cancer battle. So we'll pay their mortgage, we'll pay their rent, we'll pay their car payment, we'll give them gift cards for groceries or for gas. We really want them to not focus on their financial situation and instead focus on the health of their child. And I love this work. I love the work and it's fulfilling every day.
That's amazing. So when you had an epiphany, a situation where you thought enough is enough, I want to make a change, be someone that actually does something significant, right? And you did that, and one thing led to another, and you ended up in your perfect job.
Yes. And it was the scariest thing I ever did because of all of the, the social stigmas, or also the social pressures, perhaps, of, a good career, a good job, stability and all those things. And I had to fight against them to fit into my values, my new values. And the scariest thing I ever did was quit a really good job. I had no complaints about that job other than it wasn't filling my soul, which feels really uncomfortable to say in cocktail party conversations, right? Someone looks at you like, you did what? I had a great job. I had a really cool one that people thought was amazing, and people couldn't understand why I quit. And I had to, really just stay true again to myself, my values, what I'd learned, my mom's legacy. All these things just suddenly felt more important. And I actually, as terrifying as it was, because I had always been driven, and I'd always been into stability and financial security, all those things. I was like, I feel like my mom and the universe are going to take care of me. It's going to work out. And, I did some things to obviously protect against that. I saved up some money, and, I did the smart things that every smart woman or person should do. But ultimately, I did take a leap of faith, and it worked out.
That's really good. So when it comes to the kids, so you deal a lot with the kids. Is it the situation that you get kids of all types? So you get neurodivergent kids and other kids in other different ways. Yeah. Okay. So how do you treat the situation differently? Are you in a position that you have to do certain things differently depending on their issues? And could you just describe what you go through that and what type of kids have certain issues?
Yeah. It turns out that cancer does not discriminate, right? And we see kids with cancer who also have autism. We see kids with cancer that also have ADHD. We see kids with cancer that also have Down syndrome. It's probably one of the cruelest things to see these compounding challenges for a child. That's really the heartbreaker. And as I said, cancer doesn't discriminate. And so, we aim to support kids that have the greatest need, to be honest. Our budget can only go so far, and it is, sometimes we have to make tough choices. And so we do like to prioritize those who have the greatest need. And ultimately those are children with multiple challenges in their life. And so that's where we usually aim to support those who need it the most.
Okay, so is there a reason why? Is there certain situations why that you make sure you focus on them? Is there some examples why you do that?
Yeah, I mean, again, the financial challenges for families when they're in a cancer diagnosis are very real. Even if you have dual income families, mom and dad are working or both guardians, a lot of times a parent steps away from work. And then suddenly a family's income is cut in half.
Yes.
At a time when their expenses are doubling. And, so we will look at a lot of those cases, and especially kids who have multiple children. And some of them may have challenges themselves. If you have one child that's neurodivergent, you might have more. And those burdens financially become so deep. And we never want a family to make a choice between treatment and putting food on the table. I never want to have a family make a choice between putting gas in the car and choosing whether or not to get to the hospital, right? So I want to, again, take away some of the challenging choices where I can. We can't cure a lot of these things. We can't cure cancer. We can't change someone's neurodivergent status. But what I can do is I can pay their bills and make it a little bit easier for them.
So do you go beyond, that's what you do is massive. First of all, that's ginormous because, paying the bills, well, that goes without saying. It's scary, especially when you've got a family to look after. But do you do anything as an organization beyond paying the bills? Do they go through anything else other than that with your organization?
We do a lot of also emotional work. When I say that, I mean providing a sense of community and encouragement and a feeling of that you are not alone. So we have a lot of volunteers that simply write letters of encouragement to families with a child battling cancer. Really? It's so beautiful.
Of course.
It's so beautiful. And, you know, you think this simple act of writing a letter or a card or drawing a picture may not mean something. Oh, it does. It really does. And so every bill that we pay, we include these letters to families. And we get pictures back. We get pictures of people who put them on their fridge, who take them with them to treatment. It's that source of hope because it makes you feel less alone, makes you feel seen and heard, makes you feel respected and part of a community. And that small act of kindness combined with some financial support does wonders.
And when it comes to support, you obviously support them, but who supports you to keep making sure that you can support the children?
What a beautiful question. We rely solely on individuals to make those gifts, those donations, in order for us to do the work we do. And it is one of the hardest things we have to do, you know, having to ask for funds. And it's a very simple formula. The more I fundraise, the more bills I can pay. It's not more complicated than that. And so sometimes we rely on companies, we rely on family foundations, but our primary source of fundraising and revenue is just everyday humans who care deeply about making a difference and paying it forward for another human.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely wonderful. I see the significance you're making in people's lives, as we've already spoken about the financial side, but more importantly, actually, it's just the mental side with people sending the letters. You know, when people feel alone, when families feel alone, you know, and just getting that letter and that kindness makes a massive difference.
Yes, it does.
I tell you what, Erica, I wish I could carry on speaking with you, but we've gone over the hour, unfortunately.
My goodness, we've had such a good time here.
I'm telling you, well, we've followed a beautiful journey from you, first of all. And the reason being is because it shows the listeners that you have true passion for helping people, especially with cancer, be them women or children. And the reason being is because of all your journey that you had with your mother in more ways than one, as well as with yourself. And you still had to relive that. And by taking that journey, you've taken that passion, which means that you can be an advocate for people that really need your help. And you get up because you want to and not because you have to. And that makes all the difference, especially when you're interacting with the families one-to-one and they can feel that. And that makes all the difference, right? When you have compassion, true compassion for people, that makes all the difference.
It does. And the thing about compassion is that it's free. It's
Exactly.
free to give and free to receive.
Erica, thank you for being you. Really do appreciate it. And how can they contact the organization?
Yes, they can get on our website, which is www.pinkyswear.org. So that's a pinky swear that you make like with a child. You know, again, we make that promise to help people when they need it most. They can also reach me personally and learn about my book at my own website, which is Erica Neubert Campbell.com. And that's Erica, E-R-I-C-A. Neubert is Neubert, and Campbell, CAMPBELL.com. The book is called The Mastectomy I Always Wanted. And I really encourage anyone who's in that journey to take a look and learn more.
And with that said, listeners, as you can see, support is needed. So not only if you need support from them, but if you can support them, no matter how small that support may be, if we all come together as a community and support them as best as we can, they can do more in turn and do it in a way that means a lot to the families. Erica, thank you for your time. Really do appreciate you.
I really appreciate you, Eli, and to all your listeners, thank you.
Our pleasure. And we will have all the links and everything down below, so you can copy and paste, click away to your heart's content. But in the meantime, sayonara.